There are actually two shots that define truly skilled players, yet surprisingly, most are still afraid to use them. To stop the cue ball in place, we have to hit it below its center. However, when hitting only slightly below its center, we have to use much more speed than in a scenario where we are hitting very low. This is caused by the fact that lower contact point causes the cue ball to rotate backwards with more spin, so in order to lose this rotation, we need to hit it very soft. I know it may sound strange, but you can still hit the cue ball very low and cause it to follow the object ball. This type of shot we call drag shot, which means that in first step, cue ball rotates with backward rotation, which it begins to lose, and just before contact with the object ball, it is already spinning with forward rotation, so after contact with object ball, it actually goes forward. This type of shot might be very useful in situations like this, where we have to get from 8 ball to the 9 ball, but we face long distance shot and quite uncomfortable angle. I'm practically sure that most beginners will choose to roll this ball, but unfortunately this attempt comes with a couple of problems. First of all, an amount of side spin, even just tiny bit, will cause the cue ball to curve, so we may not hit a ball at its goals ball. On the other hand, even if we make that ball, in most cases the cue ball will still have a bit of momentum, which will cause it to bounce off the bottom rail and land too high, leaving us with a really awkward shot. So in this case, you should aim the cue ball lowest as you can and add on a bit of right spin. Executing this type of drag shot, we are able to slow down the cue ball dramatically before contacting a ball, where next right spin plays a key role, which allows us to stay quite low on the table and get a pretty good shape on the 9 ball. When we hit the cue ball very high with different speeds, then it always follows the object ball, but does it in a slightly different way. When hitting with low speed, the cue ball moves forward almost immediately, but if we hit much harder, it took much longer, because first cue ball rotates in place longer, and then starts moving forward with much more speed than before. However, situation looks quite different when we hit the cue ball just slightly above its center. This time, when we roll the cue ball, it still goes forward, but much shorter than before. However, the biggest difference is visible when we hit harder. The very interesting thing is that the cue ball is going even shorter comparing to the shot with low speed, and this happens because it has just tiny bit of forward rotation, which allows it to move slightly forward. This type of shot we call stun run through, which means that despite applied high speed, cue ball moves only slightly forward because of very low amount of topspin. And this is the moment where we need to talk about this A-ball situation. Making 4-ball is a quite obvious thing, but getting shape on the A-ball comes with a couple of problems. First of all, these 3 strike balls are located very close to the 8 ball, significantly limiting the optimal position area. Because we face a perfect straight-in shot, we can move the cue ball along this straight line. However, playing a draw shot, leaving us with really awkward shot on the 8 ball, which we would definitely like to avoid. We are actually forced to make precise positioning to this area, so if we try to roll this ball, then we are able to get perfect shape on the 8 ball, but 4 ball has not enough speed to reach the pocket. Okay, so how about we just use more speed? And well, this is also not good, because this time we are able to make 4 ball, but cue ball goes way too long, and we land behind strike ball. But don't worry, The good news is that you can use stun run through shot to make 4-ball and move the cue ball just tiny bit forward, and we can achieve it by hitting the cue ball just tiny bit above its center and use very high speed. Okay, how do we distinguish when we should use both types of shots? We face a very long straight-in shot, and I have seen this countless times where players desperately tried to create angle from nowhere and move the cue ball to the left side of the table. On the other hand, I can see players who try to slow roll the cue ball to land on the right side of the table, and this is another big mistake. In this scenario, we can actually use two solutions, where in the first one we try to play a stun shot to move the cue ball just slightly forward. However, this is a very difficult shot and requires a lot of experience because cue ball needs to cover long distance and we need to hit the cue ball just tiny bit above its center and use very high speed. On the other hand, by executing drag shot, we also use firmer stroke to hit the cue ball very low, but after a certain distance the cue ball starts to lose this rotation, slows down, and just before the object ball it has forward rotation. In my opinion, if you face a long distance shot where cue ball needs to cover quite long distance, you should use a drag shot, but on the other hand, where distance between balls is much shorter, then choosing stun run through will be a much better choice. And trust me, mastering those two shots will take your skills to a whole new level, and if you want to learn more interesting shots, you have to check out this video where I prove that very often side spin is not necessary at all to make our game much easier.